There's never a dull moment when it comes to Minnesota sports. Whether it's positive or negative.
The Yankees have swept the Twins.
Minnesota Sports Chat has you covered. Talking nothing but Minnesota sports all year long. It's time now for the soon-to-be award-winning, if only in his own mind, Minnesota Sports Chat with your host, Ross Brendel.
Welcome inside. Hard to believe already, edition number 200 of the soon-to-be award-winning Minnesota Sports Chat presented by Beans Coffee Company. Use that promo code SPORTSCHAT. Again, that's Sports Chat, one word at checkout. You'll save a little cash when you get some of that delicious small batch roasted coffee in Mankato, Minnesota. My guest today, Mankato, near and dear to his heart. That one guest on the pod, we'll talk some puck, we'll talk Wild and Gophers. I suppose we'll talk purple because we have to. It's the A-talker in town. More often than not, it's hockey royalty. It's Mr. Alex Micheletti. How do you feel about that? Hockey royalty.
I like it. Thanks for the setup there. Yeah, interesting couple weeks of Minnesota sports. So fire away for sure.
Well, I think let's do this. Let's start with the Minnesota Wild because much like a lot of people in town, I see you firing off tweet storms about the Minnesota Wild, or sorry, X storms. And I should mention, for people that don't know, I'm assuming they do if they listen to this pod, they can find you on the X machine at Alex Micheletti. I do want to talk Minnesota Wild because I think this franchise always bugs me, but I say bugs me in a loving way, right? You want to get behind them. You want them to be relevant. You want them to make playoff pushes. But they're so dang hard to like at times because and follow me here, it just seems like the best version of the Minnesota Wild that you get is always a month or two after firing a head coach. And I really think I thought after we changed some players, and by change players, to use a PJ Fleck term, change the culture. You moved on from Parise and Suter. I thought that was supposed to weed some of this stuff out. But Alex, all I can do is look at the results this year and say, for lack of a better term, you sucked with Dean Evison. I think you quit on him. I think that's pretty evident now. And we're recording this. The Wild will play a game tonight. This is on a Tuesday. This will drop on a Wednesday. But they're 11-5 with John Hines, and I think they've lost a couple in a row, correct? So before that, they were even 11-3. So what gives, and why is it always this way with the Minnesota Wild?
I don't know. I think, with these pro athletes, they get a little embarrassed that their coach gets fired and they think they have a major reason for the firing. Of course, it's their play. I mean, and you see guys like Matt Boldy finally producing with John Hines, after the fact. And, I think with hockey too, if your goalies aren't playing well, that dooms you in because they're the most important players on the team. If they can't stop the puck, good luck. But this team is so frustrating too. They start to play a lot better, and then they just get more and more injuries. Kirill Kaprizov, he gets a couple of game winners in a row, and now is out. Probably. They say week to week, but when you get the week to week, it seems like it ends up being like a month. So that is just absolutely killer right now, and it's such a weird NHL season too because the teams in front of them just never lose. So the Wild can keep on winning, but it doesn't matter if you're not gaining any ground. And so it's they're in for a tough stretch right now without Gus and Kaprizov.
Explain to me on the Kaprizov injury, because you see this a lot in the playoffs, exactly how he got injured.
Yeah.
At some point, the NHL has to step in and clean this up because you can't. It's akin, or I liken it to the NFL trying to protect quarterbacks. Yeah. Now, to a degree, I will say I think we've jumped the shark. I think we protect them too much. You might as well basically claim they're place kickers or punters at this point. But when you're getting cross-checked or checked or jabbed for no apparent reason, I just don't think that's good for the game. And I get it, you see me complain about this all the time. I get it. You have on-ice enforcers for a reason.
Right.
But that's going to work that night for 2-3 minutes. It doesn't solve the problem when the Jets get to go on and keep playing and the Minnesota Wild are left without their franchise player. And I just don't know how that's ever going to get better without the NHL stepping in and legislating. And again, I get it. Violent game. But let the violent stuff happens because it happens. We don't need to have more of it just because we're trying to prove a point or slow somebody down or show that we're the tougher team or take out the other team's star player. I just don't really think there's a place for that in the game. Now, again, I can be naive. You can tell me that I'm wrong, but I don't see how that benefits the game that Kaprizov is now out for, like you said, weeks, if not a month, for something that was entirely preventable.
Yeah, well, and there was more nonsense today too. The Winnipeg Jets,
yes,
they had their player scrums, and Cole Perfetti said that Ryan Hartman, high sticked him in the face deliberately because of the Kaprizov, incident, and it was picked up on microphone. But of course, with the NHL, they have an agreement with players if they're mic'd up that what they say on the mics can't be used against them, and it's unbelievable. This league, sometimes they get in their own way, and they could have suspended Ryan Hartman, but because they can't use the audio from the mic'd up from Cole Perfetti, they just fined him, and a fine doesn't do anything really. It
never
nothing
does
to these guys. And so, they could have suspended, Hartman and actually given an actual punishment, but it's just a slap on the wrist, and they play each other on February 20th again. And so that, there's going to be more issues in that game, guaranteed. It's not going to end now.
Can this team jump up into the wild card? I mean, if you look at it 16 games at a time, if you go 11-5, sure that they should. Heck, they'd probably make it into the top 3 in their own division. Yeah. But also, is that really sustainable? You mentioned with this team, you do kind of have some depth issues, and that does go all the way back to the former GM trading basically every draft pick you had away for 5 years. That's a little bit of hyperbole, but Chuck Fletcher moved a lot of draft picks that the organization is still paying for, and then you have the money that's still tied up into Parise and Suter for the rest of this year, into next year, and then it finally gets better after that. Is this realistically a team that, one, can make the playoffs this year? And if they do, aside from a goaltender standing on his head, which he would have to do for any team, can they realistically do anything? Because to me, we're kind of back at the point, and I don't like saying this, but to me, we're kind of back at the point, get out of the first round and then get back to me. Like, I'm not going to get invested until you get out of the first round.
Right. Well, this is ending up, if they do make the playoffs, it's going to probably be a wild card spot, and that is so much harder to advance out of the first round than it is if you finish in the top 3 in your division. But I just don't see it. I mean, they have another injury right before we got on the podcast. They said Marcus Foligno is now not playing. Yep. So, I mean, it just seems like every game they can't make it out without an injury. And they barely, the Iowa Wild have so many injuries. They barely have anybody to call up from the Iowa Wild. And, it has to be a certain amount of, money with their contract that they can call them up. And so they just called up Sammy Walker, who has had a couple stints with the Wild, former Gopher. But it just it just seems like this is the year where the injuries are going to be way too hard to overcome. Especially, I mean, if Gus is, they're saying he had to get more scans today. That's never a good thing. When they can't figure out what it is, off the first scans, and that they have to redo it or get get more imaging of it, that's never a good sign. And you have a 39-year-old backup. He can't be carrying the load all by himself for an entire month. So yeah, I don't. That's a major issue for sure. Too.
Well, and in Gus Bus too, you're talking about a guy who is largely, again, I don't know if you can ride him to a Stanley Cup, but he's turned himself back into a pretty darn good goaltender and resurrected his career here. So if this would have been 2 years ago, granted, he would have been playing for somebody else, but if he sustained an injury, you would have said, oh, whatever, he's 5-27, who really cares? But now you look at a team that needs to scratch and claw for literally every point that they can get. And when you're going to have to bring somebody up or play somebody behind Fleury who is unproven and not as tested, that creates a bit of a problem. On the Iowa Wild, just a quick aside here that has nothing to do with hockey but experience. Have you ever made that trip down to Des Moines and watched an Iowa Wild game or spent any time at, I believe it's Wells Fargo Arena or Wells Fargo Center? Have you ever done that trip?
I've just watched like on like a computer screen. I haven't been down there. I would love to get down there sometime. The arena looks really nice.
Yeah, Des Moines, sneaky nice city to spend 24, 48 hours in. I've done that trip. I think I've seen 2 Iowa Wild games, maybe 3, and now an Iowa Timberwolves game. It's worth it. Easy drive. The arena's pretty nice, and as you walk around, you'll literally see hundreds of acts and bands. They have basically a banner or a plaque for everybody that's ever been there. It's a pretty cool arena right on the right on the water in downtown Des Moines. So there you go.
Insurance
Minnesota
capital
Wild
of the U.S.
Yeah. You would know that, right?
Yeah, we might know that,
they're all over, by the way. When you go downtown, they're all over. That is literally 80% of, I believe, the commerce in downtown Des Moines. I want to switch gears just a little bit, spend just a moment or two. One of my passions, as you know, go for hockey. I'm still not over last year. That's going to take years to get over. So we won't even talk about it because it still bugs me.
Yeah.
But I'll set it up this way. Coming off of last year, we're now what? I guess they resume action on Sunday. So it's been about 3 weeks. Coming out of the break here, they'll be 10th in the country. What are they? 9-5-4, checking my notes. It's been a little lackluster. I thought the ranking at the beginning of the year was probably a bit too high for what they lost.
Yeah.
But at this point in the year, 18 games into the season, I guess I thought they'd still be better than the 10th ranking in the country. I'm not so worried. I think they're going to make the tournament. And as Bob Motzko, teams have proven sometimes for all the wrong reasons, I'm not really sure it matters what seed you are anymore in the NCAA hockey tournament. I really don't think it matters. It matters more about how you're playing when you get there and maybe some of the matchups. So can this team ramp up and be a team that can make a Frozen Four run, which, oh, by the way, is in their backyard this year?
Yeah, that's the ultimate motivation for sure. Maybe they aren't as talented as they were last season, but to get it at home, that's the ultimate goal. And this team hasn't won a national title in a long time, and so that's why Jimmy Snuggerud came back. That's why you have the fifth year guys come back. Brodzinski, Jackson Nelson, they could be playing pro hockey right now, but they wanted to win a national title. And so, it's going to be this year in college hockey. You cannot predict it. I mean, it seems like you have upsets every weekend, and the team that's number one always seems to have get an upset. So you don't want to be the number one team, and a lot of the blue bloods are back in it. You see a Wisconsin too with Mike Hastings bringing him back from the bottom of the Big Ten up all the way up to the top, and so it's just an interesting year of college hockey. Of course, with losing Logan Cooley at the last second, that did not do the Gophers any favors, because you really can't find anybody that late to replace his talents. So anytime you have a goalie like Justin Close, though, that's huge, because he's been there. He's a grad student. And so, he's almost 26 years old, which, all these other teams get made fun of for having older players, and Close is one of the oldest in college hockey right now. But, that experience helps so much, and we'll see if he can get him back to another Frozen Four.
It would be something if the Gophers, who historically in recent memory have run into teams in the NCAA tournament that have all those players that I joke are closer to AARP than they are closer to their high school graduation. It would be quite ironic if maybe it's one of those guys in their mid to pushing late 20s who perhaps leads them back to their first national championship in 21, 22 years? I think it would be 22 years.
It's amazing.
The Big Ten, I don't know if we can say they've arrived. They're still missing their first national championship. Maybe it'll come this year for Minnesota or Wisconsin. Time will tell. Heck, could be other teams. But look, and I'm one of these people, I'd love it to be the way that it used to be, the way it was when your dad played. I'd love it to still be WCHA, but when the ship sailed, It's never coming back.
No.
And one credit I will give to Bob Motzko, and I think it's largely on him just because of the product on the ice. And I love Don Lucia. You won't find many more Don Lucia defenders that are more ardent than I am. But, you get 2 decades into something. Sometimes it just runs its course and you have to do something a little bit different. There is a new life and energy at Mariucci Arena, and that came in a few years ago kind of with Bob Motzko. And they've sustained it. When you're there now, it's a lot of fun. But I think a part of that just is finally the turnover, where I think maybe the people who were so ardently against Big Ten hockey have either come back to it, or you've just brought new fans into the program and new fans of college hockey, because it's noticeable now when you go to Mariucci. There is a fervor, so to speak, and I really do appreciate that. I've only been out to one game this year. I call it the soft remodel or the soft reboot of the arena. It looks nice. I mean, I think if you only go to a handful of games a year, or maybe you only go every couple of years, I'm not sure you would really notice. But I did. Heck, it's just brighter in there. It just looks better in there. That was always big to me. And by the way, the arena across the street, I think Williams Arena could use, at the very least, fresh coat of paint and some new lighting. But your overall thoughts on Big Ten hockey, because I've enjoyed it. It took a little bit, but I do like that the Gopher football team is playing some of the same teams that the Gopher hockey team is playing. The Gopher basketball team playing some of the same teams. I'd love to see Illinois get that hockey team that's been rumored for 5 years now. Maybe it's still going to happen soon. I think Northwestern could add a team at some point. There's money at that university. Heck, there's not many universities in the country with more money than the University of Nebraska. If Nebraska at Omaha can play college hockey, they can have it in Lincoln too. So I'm even hopeful we'll add more teams as the sport continues to grow.
Yeah, heck, you see the jerseys that Oregon has. I mean, for hockey, they're sweet too. They have the duck, and Washington has a really good club hockey team too. And
the UCLA club hocky jerseys are incredible.
Yeah, that baby blue and gold is
it's great.
Yeah, so it'd be fun to see those, and those teams those schools have a ton of money too.
Yeah, I think UCLA has money. I'm pretty sure there's enough money to fund a hockey program.
And now that they're in the Big Ten, it's crazy. Is coast to coast now. It's unbelievable. And with the TV money that the conference is doing pretty good, I think. Yeah. So, I really enjoy Big Ten hockey. It seems the skill level continues to get off the charts. They're getting some of the best recruits in the country, and college hockey is changing so much with NIL money coming into it now too. You see, Michigan State was just awful last year, but now they have and NIL money coming in and able to get transfers, and some of the top recruits from the national development team, and they're going to be a force to reckon with, because you can pay these guys a lot of money and get them in without having to recruit too much.
Was Bob lying at the beginning of the year when he said NIL really hasn't infiltrated college hockey, or at least Gopher hockey? Was that him being coy, or was that basically him saying, look, at this point, we're the University of Minnesota, we don't have to pay players, like we're turning kids away? Because I find it hard to believe that it hadn't infiltrated college hockey, and now you're talking about that it more than likely has, and I don't know how it couldn't. I mean, heck, the Gophers, I'm blanking on the name, the Gophers probably lost the kid back to Boston College because of money.
Iserman,
Thank you.
Yeah, and he was here yesterday with his, with the junior team at a exhibition against Gophers. But yeah, it is going to be a major thing. I mean, and now that all these top guys have agents too, and they're directing, they're calling these coaches and saying, what do you have to offer to get my get my client to
get
your
these
school?
services.
Exactly, get these services, because I want to get paid when they get to the NHL. So
well, I put the Yzerman kid on you. If you would have had more Grey Duck beer and more parlor burgers at Huntington Bank Stadium, maybe he would have been here. Which leads me to this, a quick plug for Beans Coffee Company, who's been supporting the podcast now for over a year. Again, promo code SportsChat. Use that at checkout. Great small batch coffee, blends for everybody, even decaf if that's your thing. I don't know why that would be, but if it is your thing, you can get some great decaf coffee, cold brew, light roast, medium roast, dark roast. They have it all. Roasted locally in Mankato. I love the Profectus. The Mikado's good. Heck, I love them all. I'm such a shill. And you can tell that it's true because people see me drinking it all the time. I wouldn't drink it if I didn't appreciate it and love it. Well, the Minnesota Vikings, they continue to do what the Minnesota Vikings do. Stay in. I think I'll steal this from, I think it was Paul Allen years ago, coined it, may have been talking about the Vikings 15, 20 years ago. Heck, it could have been something else. Terminal mediocrity. And that's what I would say the Vikings have been in my entire life. I'm on the back half of my 30s, 37, I'll be 38 later this year. It's an incredibly entertaining franchise. I'll give them that. They're so seldomly horrible. But Alex, in my opinion, I'd love to pick your brain on this. Yep. When you're so seldomly horrible, that's kind of part of the problem.
Yeah, 100%.
When you've truly never bottomed out, you don't have a ton of money to spend in free agency, you maybe don't have the best draft capital, it just puts you in a tough spot. And that's not to say you can't win a Super Bowl the way the Vikings have tried to do it. But eventually you can only kick the can so far down the road. And I think the Vikings, I don't know if they're at that point yet, but they're really close. I don't know how many more years you're going to get out of Kirk Cousins before you have to have the exit plan. I think there's a case to be made. You have Cousins in the fold for a year or two longer if you can get him to agree to a number that both sides would agree upon, which that's a separate conversation. Yeah. And the exit plan needs to start now. And the exit plan never was going to be Jaren Hall. I think everybody knows that. A separate aside, I have no idea what the heck Kevin O'Connell was thinking because you go at... Now, I'm going all over the place here. Yeah. You know I like to do this. But you say at halftime, his struggles, they were kind of expected or they weren't unexpected. Well, okay, well then I think two things. One, why was he even out there if you were honestly trying to win the game? Or two, if you knew those struggles were to be expected, he should have been out there in the second half trying to learn from them, and he should be starting on Sunday against the Lions because... Yeah. In my opinion, even had you won those two games, there's still a good chance you were going to miss the playoffs. At 9-8, the Vikings still could have missed the playoffs. So I don't know. I have no the fire Kevin O'Connell stuff to me is ridiculous. That's not going to happen, nor should it. But the quarterback carousel since Cousins went down to me is a little bit ridiculous. At some point, you just have to realize none of these guys are really any better than the other one. I think you just got to stick with it and go with it. But I'm kind of at my wit's end with the Vikings. That's the moral of the podcast here. Kind of at my wit's end with the Wild. Definitely at my wit's end with the Vikings. Because I think the answer is clear cut. I think it's so easy and obvious what you try and do this offseason. You set a number for Kirk Cousins. It's probably a 2-year deal where he gets a boatload of that money in year one. If he says no, you go pick your best bridge quarterback. Heck, it might even be Russell Wilson on a 1 or 2 year deal. Yikes. You use your 8th to 14th overall pick to either move up or get the quarterback that you want, or at least you can live with, and hope that works out. I fear, Judd Zulgad brought this up on Before I Die, Purple Daily earlier today that we recorded, that is out on YouTube. I fear exactly what he said, that they will use we'll call it the 10th overall pick. They'll use it on like an edge rusher, which again, maybe helps now. That doesn't help you for 5 to 7, 10 years down the road, which at some point you need to find a franchise quarterback. We love to poke fun at the Chicago Bears. Have the Vikings had more than one franchise quarterback?
No.
France Arlington, probably.
The guy we watched last night, Michael Penix Jr., that is who I want on this Viking squad. I don't care that he's going to be 24 years old. That might be better because he might be more prepared. With a little bit more age, but he's got one of the best deep balls I've seen in a long time. I mean, he was dropping dimes against a pretty good Texas defense, and he had over 430 passing yards and multiple touchdowns. That was
plays great indoors.
Heck of a performance. And when you have a guy like that, you take a chance on that. That is a guy that's worth taking the chance on. And heck, he does have the ACL injuries, but hey, Kirk is coming off a torn Achilles at 35 plus, which, going to be 36 years old. That could easily, happen again.
Well, and the argument to me has always been, so again, let's just say you stay at 10. I don't know who it is. It's probably not going to be Caleb Williams or Drake May.
No.
Crazier things have happened. But it's probably not going to be them.
No.
Well, let's say it's J.J. McCarthy. That's who you decide is the guy you want. And I don't know when he would be available, but for argument's sake, let's say you just take him 10th overall. Does it really matter if he's a bust? You're just going to try it again in 3 years.
Right.
And newsflash, the Vikings drafted one of those guys that was a bust and still went to the playoffs with him, Christian Ponder. I'm not saying you want to draft Christian Ponder, but what I'm saying is it doesn't necessarily all mean doom and gloom if you don't hit a home run on who you draft. And again, what's the worst thing? You try it again in 3 or 4 years?
Right.
Okay, well, fine. Then so be it.
And the big problem too is you have to pay Justin Jefferson too, and he's going to want Tyreek Hill money, $30 million a year, more $30 million plus a year at the wide receiver position, and you're going to have some tough choices to make because do you want to pay Danielle Hunter too? Because without Danielle Hunter, you have no pass rushers on this team at all, zero. So that's a scary part, and this team. It always seems to have secondary issues. It doesn't
matter how many they draft either.
It just the Lewis Seen he's never seen on the field.
Yes, never.
And
I appreciate the joke. I love
yes,
using that one.
You.
Good work there.
And Andrew Booth, the most relevant thing he did this past week was getting in a fight after the game with an inactive Packers player. It's just you can't make it up. The draft,
and you got to hit on those picks. A second round pick is it's not a first round pick, but it's pretty damn near it, right? You got to hit on those picks.
And Quezzy's helped both the Packers and the Lions with inter division trades. So and not drafting Kyle Hamilton is proven to be a gigantic mistake, especially if the Ravens win the Super Bowl this year.
I'm with you. I love Michael Penix Jr., but I'll say this. I say this all the time. When I go into watching a draft as a fan, and Purple Daily, we put on a draft party every year, and there'll be an announcement, I don't know, sometime going forward for where the location is this year. I more or less look for positions. Everybody thinks they know, but we don't know how good these guys are going to be.
Right.
Like we don't. I mean, my gut says I don't like that Bo Nix is already going to be 35 when you draft him, but also who cares if he comes in and plays really well for 7 to 10 years? I guess I don't really care. So my thought is it's not my job to make the pick and get it right. It's Quessie's and his scouts and his team. It's their job, and whoever they get, I'm going to wait and see and hope that it works out. At this point, CJ Stroud looks like so much better of a pick than Bryce Young, but I'm not going to bury Bryce Young after a year. I'll give it a little bit of time.
Well, but look at his owner throwing drinks at fans too.
Yeah,
that,
and again,
dysfunction from the top.
Yeah, it's dysfunction, and then they fire the coach. 2/3 into the season in year one? To me, that's a little ridiculous. And then again, like, not to throw shade at Adam Thielen, which I do kind of love to do, because I didn't know. Did you know Carolina is a 2-14 Super Bowl contending team?
You wanted to go to a more competitive team.
And I'm glad that Mrs. Thielen feels more valued on her 2-14 Carolina Panthers team. Sorry, Thielen family.
Yeah.
But to me, the whole thing just continues to be interesting, where the Vikings will go, what they do. And the reality is, I think we all believe in our heart of hearts or know what they should do, even if you love Kirk Cousins.
Mhm.
But it's the Vikings. It just feels like they won't do that. So when Judd brings up taking the, maybe the edge rusher or the linebacker 10th overall, that terrifies me. Now, my comeback to that was, again, let's just say it's the 10th overall pick. Well, that goes to pick 42 in the second round.
Right.
Do you maybe move up to pick 36 and you get one of the quarterbacks who fell? And who knows, maybe that guy turns out to be your franchise guy.
Right.
If that was to happen, okay, maybe I could buy that, but I'm so tired of that. Identify your guy. If you need to, give up whatever it takes, and let's see. That's where I'm at with the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, it's it's never ending. This team has so many more issues than when you just think more and more about the team, and the depth is just a major issue on the defense. And heck,
the tackles are great, by the way.
Yeah,
O'Neal and Darrisaw are great, but they're always injured.
Always,
they can't get through an entire season or an entire game half the time.
And then and then it's always just and then the quarterbacks get hurt because the line is Olay, let the defenders come and just destroy the quarterbacks. But and secondary issue, Harrison Smith might retire, and so that's a major hole at safety. And clearly Lewis Seen isn't going to be the heir apparent to Harrison Smith.
I don't see him replacing Harrison Smith anytime soon.
When he can only get on for special teams, or if the game isn't a blowout, that's a major red flag for sure.
Let's do this. I could talk to you all night. I won't do that. I know you got a Wild game to watch. I got to find some dinner and take care of some stuff. So I'm going to give you 5 filler questions, which was inspired by Phil Mackey, hence 5 filler questions.
Yep.
These are just random questions. Some are sports, some are not. You're going to get a few sports ones. Question number 1, and first off, I think I've told you this. Not that you really care. I think you should be really proud of what you've done. I mean, you've built a name for yourself, and you're all over, and I listen to pretty much everything that you do because I love hockey, watched it my entire life. You've forgotten more than I'll ever know. Okay, so props to you for that. But growing up, and again, your father, Pat Micheletti, did you ever feel urged to go that way into hockey and into sports? Was it just something that evolved over time? Was Mr. Micheletti basically do whatever you want, or was it no, you're coming to the rink with me? What was that evolution, and what did that process look like growing up?
Sports has always been a major part of my life, and something that brings me so much joy. As you know, I'm into pretty much basically any sport. I just love watching the competition and watching these athletes compete, and it's so much fun going to the rink with my dad and going to college hockey games and watching that sport, and means so much to me. I worked for the Mavericks when I was in college, and then have continued to just go with my dad, and I've been in multiple hockey podcasts now, but it's just I love it so much. And just with the evolution of social media too, just with all the funny things that occur during games or in the crowd too, and just commentating about it. It's interacting with people all over the world. It's amazing. Our Locked On Wild podcasts with the power of YouTube, we get people from all over the world that are somehow,
it's incredible, isn't it?
Fans. I mean, it's insane. I mean, we obviously we got the Russians with Kirill Kaprizov, but I mean, there's people in Scotland, Ireland, Brazil. It's like the Timberwolves with the Brazil
Timberwolves,
fans.
Brazil. Yeah,
it's like, how are these people associated with Minnesota? I would love to know how they chose their fandom to be with teams that always break our hearts here locally. But it's I just love interacting with everybody through social media too. It's so much fun.
The Russia thing's interesting because anytime I talk Minnesota Wild because of Kirill, you can see the metrics more in podcast form than YouTube form. YouTube's done a good job, but podcast form, it's actually really creepy how much I can drill down, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll get so many downloads in Russia, and especially with what's going on in the world right now, it's really kind of humbling, but also weird at the same time. So the Russian thing is really interesting to me. So this actually came up this morning when I woke up, did what most people do. You check the X machine or the Twitter these days. And I kind of laughed because I don't know exactly what your work schedule is.
Yeah.
But you sent me a DM at 1:30 in the morning last night.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it made me think, what is the optimal amount of sleep that you need? Because I can tell you, as I've gotten older, I've reverted kind of back to being a teenager. I can go to bed at 10 p.m. and sleep till 10 a.m. if I want to. And for a while, I used to be a guy that went to bed at 12, 1 o'clock, and I would get up at 7:30 and feel great. If I do that now, I'm not pushing 40, but inching there, I feel awful, right? So I laughed this morning when I think you work today.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, so how much sleep did you get? Is that a normal thing, or are you just wired that way?
No, it just, especially after like big games, like I can't go to bed, I'm so.
And they were
so
great college
up.
football games on New Year's Day. They were great. They were fantastic.
Well, especially, I mean, you saw Washington, they almost completely blew it.
They almost Vikinged.
Yeah, that was insane. That last minute of the game, it's like everybody's telling them just to kneel, and they didn't. And then they allowed Texas to go all the way down the field, and I don't know, Sarkisian's play calling there at the end was just absolutely ridiculous. They should have easily probably won that game, but they just the ineptitude they turned into a pumpkin there late. It was entertaining. You just are so amped up, and just there were so many funny things that happened in both games too. You had Connor Stallions showing up to that Michigan-Alabama game. When I saw
they knew
face,
he'd be there, right? They knew he'd be there.
Yes, there's the fact that he actually did it is incredible. Incredible.
I can't believe not one person at Michigan who has any power said, Connor, this would be really good for us if you want to come to a game maybe next year, let's talk. Could you avoid this one and maybe the next one?
The hoopla, it was unbelievable when I saw his grin. I was like, of course.
To your point though, before social media, would we really have known that?
No, never.
And before social media, I say this because I think they did a great job. Would the Pop-Tarts Bowl have taken off like it did before social media?
Yeah, these brands are loving that, seeing that exposure too. Yeah, it's something else for sure.
Okay, without giving away specifics here, and again, I don't know exactly what you do here, but I know you at least hear things, okay?
Yeah.
Without giving away specifics, VIN numbers, names, locations, people, I need to know the oddest or just most hilarious insurance claim that you can tell us about. That you've heard. Somebody left their car in neutral and it went into the pool, something like that. There's got to be a weird one that you've heard about in the office that stuck with you. There's got to be something.
I know, we always get them. It's crazy the amount of just ways people get in accidents. It's like, how are there like 7 or 8 people in this car? It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's like what is going on? And now you have electric cars too. It's a whole different ball game too. I'm sure you saw on the X machine too. Someone was going down the highway or the ramp the wrong way. It's a wild,
horrifying, by the way, horrifying.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine being out. That's what you sent me a message too. Nothing good happens after
after dark.
After dark, especially here in Minnesota. But it just. It's every day. I open up my computer and it's like, oh my goodness.
Well, and the problem now, like I say that jokingly, that's more meant for like midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. But the problem now in Minnesota, it's getting better, but it's dark at 5 o'clock, right? So you can't just go home all the time. You've been to a lot of different venues. Do you have a favorite venue in town or anywhere in the country that you've been to that you just love? It's that giddy experience, that first time as a kid experiencing something every time you go?
Well, I mean, Mariucci, it's just the history in that building is so much fun. But a couple years ago, I got to go to Ann Arbor and got to experience the Big House, and that was special. Just seeing the M scoreboard and just being in that environment. Of course, you'll laugh. The quarterback of the Gophers at the time was Demery Croft. So
did it rain all day? Was that
yes? Yeah.
We were at
there
the
was
same
an actual
game.
delay. Yeah,
Yep.
that was that was my welcome to the Big House moment. But that the Gophers got absolutely destroyed.
Yeah.
But it was just fun being in that atmosphere and them singing Mr. Brightside, the entire 100,000 people. So that was really, really cool. Being at TCF for the outdoor game with the Wild and the Blackhawks was a really cool moment too. Mariucci for sure, number one.
Well, that's pretty good stuff that we were at that same Michigan game, which, by the way, had no expectation of the Gophers playing well. That was, to your point with Demery Croft, that was PJ Fleck's first year, and boy, did they have a robust playbook that night of a lot of direct snaps to the running back that still frustrate one of my buddies to this day. And by the way, where'd you sit that night? I think our tickets were in East Lansing. That's how far away we were from the field.
We were there for my grandpa was turning 80, and so it was kind of like a bucket list thing. And so we had the entire family there, and we were way back there with in Gopher gear and next to all Michigan fans, and they're singing the Hail to the Victor the entire time. So but it was a great experience, just because that probably won't ever happen again. So it was fun to be there with my family.
I think I asked you this the last time, and this will be the last question, and then I'll get you out of here. We'll close out the 200th edition of Minnesota Sports Chat. Non-sports related hobbies, what do you do? We all have them. I mean, there's got to be something that you do outside of sports. Heck, even I have stuff that I do outside of sports that I really appreciate. And in an odd way, Alex, because they're not sports, I may even appreciate and enjoy them more because you're truly getting away.
Right. Yeah. No, I love live music. With the pandemic, it didn't, that shut down everything. It's a new appreciation. Yeah. It's a extremely new appreciation. My favorite band is the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And so I got to see them at US Bank Stadium. That was incredible just because I've just seen them at Excel and Target Center, but to see them in that giant of a place for a concert, that was really cool. And just getting back into seeing music, it's so much fun because they're really having to show off their talent because in studio they can make it sound perfect and everything. But when you actually get to see live music, it just takes it to a whole nother experience. It's so much fun.
I'm with you. Live music at extremely big venues or small intimate venues is great. And for me personally, it's not nearly what it used to be, but dang, do I still love going to the movie theater. It's like it's a mini vacation. You turn your phone off, you get lost in what's in front of you. Nobody can reach out to you. You're not reaching out to anybody. It's 90 minutes to 3 hours of just zoning, and you are in that world. And I appreciate it so much. As do I appreciate you making time on a school night for this podcast. So thank you so much. And hopefully we'll catch up later in the year. Maybe the Minnesota Wild will surprise us. And the next time I talk to you, we're talking about another fluky run to the Western Conference Finals, which they are 21 years overdue on now if you go back to 2003. So it's crazy when you make when you say the years and thinking how young I was. It's just even for me, how young I was. I mean, you think you're old, but you really weren't, and that's the crazy part. I'm gonna ballpark 2003. Kyle, I have no idea. I might offend you. 2003, you would have been 8.
I was born in 1991, so
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm only a
All right.
couple years younger than you.
Yeah, so we're not that far off.
Yeah,
See, I
yeah.
did compliment you then
Yes,
because you look so dang
Yeah, I'm
young.
32. So yeah. Yeah.
All right, Alex, I appreciate it. Thank you for doing this.
Of course. Yeah.
That's
thank you.
that's Alex Micheletti. Oh, very quickly, plug all the stuff that you're doing. You can do that. I know you do a lot of Locked On stuff. You appear on other pods. Please plug that.
Yeah, Locked On Wild with Seth Tubal is the host, and then also do a college hockey podcast, NCAA, where we cover all the Minnesota college hockey teams. So yeah, do that a couple times a week, and I enjoy getting my voice out there, and then obviously on Twitter a whole lot. So you can find me there at Alex Micheletti. So
I'm pitching a Canadian Football League podcast to our buddy Isha. Would you listen?
Oh yeah. Isha, we love Isha. He's a character. He's an all-time character for sure.
Yeah, go Bombers for the W. One of these years they'll not disappoint me in a Grey Cup championship again. That is Alex Micheletti at Alex Micheletti on the Twitter machine, or excuse me, X machine. I am at the Ross Brendel. Please, if you like this pod, give it a 5-star review. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, recently finally hopped into the YouTube game like all the cool kids, so you can find us there. And again, on the X machine at the Ross Brendel. Thank you to Alex, and thank you to you. 200 podcasts. I can't believe I've made it this far. Typically, I quit everything after about 4 tries. No, it's actually a lie. But 200's pretty cool, and it says more about the people listening than it does about me. So thank you. And again, I encourage you to please rate and review kindly. I'm Ross Brendel. This has been Minnesota Sports Chat. Back again in this feed next week.